goes on. So without further ado, I want to introduce our facilitator, which you all know very well. If you've been reading along and following the TT journey so far, you know that most of the materials, all of the materials are based on writings from Father Kammer. He is a priest and an attorney and a member of the U.S. Central Southern Province of the Jesuits. He is now working on diverse social and pastoral projects from his residence at the Immaculate Conception Parish in Baton Rouge. From March 1st March 1st, 2009 to July 31st of 2021, he was the director of the Jesuit Social Research Institute at Loyola University in New Orleans. And from 2002 to 2008, he was the provincial superior of the New Orleans province of the Society of Jesus, guiding their post-Katrina recovery and service to the devastated region's poor and needy. From 1992 to 2001, he was the president and CEO of Catholic Charities USA, the nation's largest voluntary human service network. Fred is also a retreat director and an author. His first book, Doing Faith, Justice, An Introduction to Catholic Social Thought, was published by Paulus Press in May of 1991, with a second printing in 1992 and a third in 2005, and a new fourth edition was published in 2023. His second book, Salted with Fire, Spirituality for the Faith Justice Journey, was published in 1995 and again republished in 2008 with Width and Stock Publishers. His third book, Faith, Works, and Wonders, An Insider's Guide to Catholic Charities, was published in September of 2009. This New Orleans native received his JD from Yale University and his MDiv from Loyola University, Chicago. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Father Kammer, who will join us and lead us in prayer. Over to you.
Thank you, Daniela, and welcome to all of you. Good morning from here in Louisiana, and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. And, the prayer is taken from Pope Francis and Fratelli Tutti, called A Prayer to the Creator. We take a quiet moment as he begin. Lord, Father of our human family, you created all human beings equal in dignity. Pour forth into our hearts a fraternal spirit and inspire in us a dream of renewed encounter, dialogue, justice, and peace. Move us to create healthier societies and a more dignified world, a world without hunger, poverty, violence, and war. May our hearts be open to all the peoples and nations of the earth. May we recognize the goodness and beauty that you have sown in each of us, and thus forge bonds of unity, common projects, and shared dreams. Amen. Photographs are of children served by Jesuit Refugee Service.
Thank you so much, Father Kammer. And before we continue, I just want to take it back 2 slides. And I want to share with you all a bit of heartbreaking news for those of us who knew him. This past 6th of September, we lost Father Eric G. Valandria. He was the Research and Collaboration Coordinator of the Social Justice and Ecology Secretariat. He was originally from the Philippines and was a man of education, very beautiful singing, ministry, and especially of hope. And in the last, I had the honor during my short time during the SJES just now, because it's been less than 6 months, to share with him. And I saw him actually the day before, so the 5th of September. And something that I want to share with you all before we continue our time together today is that he was a man who really dedicated himself to fostering hope. And so I share with you this small quote from the Jubilee of Hope, which he was really enjoying all of the pilgrims coming to Rome and everyone, all of the youth, since he had spent so much time educating the youth in the Philippines and abroad. So just to commemorate him and to say, we must fan the flame of hope that has been given us and help everyone to gain new strength. And certainly by looking to the future with an open spirit, a trusting heart, and far-sighted vision, the forthcoming Jubilee can contribute greatly to restoring a climate of hope and trust as a prelude to the renewal and rebirth that we so eagerly desire. So I ask for all of your prayers as we lay him to his final repose on Monday and as we continue to celebrate his life, which is now in eternity. So thank you all. Um, I want to explain a little bit of what I think many of you already know, which is the methodology of how we conduct these seminars. So we just switched it up a little bit for this third time together. And we're going to go first into the groups, the breakout groups. We've heard your feedback, and we know that there's not usually not enough time to really get into the nitty-gritty of the discussion. So we've changed the methodology just a little bit. If you could just go to the next slide, please. So we're going to go into the breakout groups, which will actually be timed for 45 minutes. And we will throw this guiding question and reflection into the chat for all of you to engage in. So we encourage you to introduce yourselves to each other once you get put into the breakout groups, and then engage in the discussion around the 3 topics of the TT that we have explored so far, guided by the prompt. The Global Financial Systems document noted, quote, "We need a strong ethic of solidarity that embraces the idea of the common good and the shared dignity of all people." And the question for you all to discuss being, considering the dual context of politics and/or the economy, where have you seen successful progress towards solidarity in your local, regional, or national levels, or in international institutions? And each of you is called in each group to describe one such example. So we will allow you to get into the breakout groups. Then with a 5-minute warning, we will call you back for a group discussion, a plenary session with Father Kammer, which will last about 30 minutes before the conclusion of our program. So don't worry, we will be tossing all of the instructions into the breakout groups. But if anyone has any questions right now, feel free to unmute yourselves and let me know before I toss you into the breakout groups. All right, I'll take that as a positive. And so I will go ahead and split you out into the breakout groups, and we'll see you back in the plenary in 45 minutes. Sorry, do you mind going back? Father Cameron, I don't know if you want to go ahead and join a group. If not, you can stay out here or, take a break for 45 minutes.
I'll take a break, but I'll be here.
Sounds good. Hi, Carol. We are in the breakout groups. If you would like to join the group that's assigned on your screen, you can go ahead. So, Father Cameron, just so you know, Father Roberto unfortunately will not be joining us. He had another impromptu meeting he had to attend. So, I'll just be giving thanks on his behalf at the end of the session. Okay, we're closing out the breakout groups now.
Danielle, Danielle,
Yes.
hello.
How are you, Father Bill?
I am well. We were just two in my group. John Thomas, he is going to have to leave fairly soon. So I wonder, he's working in Myanmar doing wonderful work. And I wonder if perhaps he could go early just to talk about his work. I think it would be better for them to hear from him than from me, I think, just so they could see him. But he has to leave fairly soon. So if he could be in the early part, I can always, they've heard enough of me. So I,
Of course, of course.
Bill will never hear enough of you.
no, that's Hi, Paul. How are you? Yeah, Paul hears all the time. So
Yeah.
yeah, good. Uh, thank you.
I had mentioned to our study group that I will be making a early exit from the discussion. I have to be at the monastery for Mass in a little bit, so I'll need to leave the house to get over there.
No worries. I think now that we are back in, I think most of us are back in the room now. We can go ahead and continue with our group discussion, which will take place over the next 30 minutes before we close out our time together. So whoever wants to go ahead and begin, I'll stop sharing the screen, but basically the format is as always, the floor is open, and we really want to hear about your discussions. If you want to introduce yourself as well, you're more than welcome. And then if you have any questions for Father Kammer, please go ahead.
Okay, I will go first. At the room 4 with me and William O'Neill, and we are all two in the group. So especially when we share about our work and about how we explain the difficulty of these political and financial problems and kind of negativity that especially I care more about that. I'm Father John Thomas from
I'm so
Myanmar.
sorry, Father John, do you mind just putting your microphone a little bit closer? The sound is a little far.
Okay, sorry. It's okay now.
Better.
Yes.
Could everybody
Better.
else mute their
Thank you.
microphones?
Yes. Thank you. I am Father John Thomas from Myanmar, and because last session also I was skipped because I was before I was in India and I came back to my country and newly assigned a new assignment in here, especially in the social work. So especially we talk about in the things, especially in Myanmar in this situation, it's very difficult to integrate this political and the social finance system, especially financial system that really we cannot work together with the government or even the NGO. We are working very difficult, and they will cut off a lot of things, and even we have to work in a low profile. Like kind of illegal sort of illegal things. Even in my social work, like Jesuit work in Myanmar, some this kind of social relief or like that are unregistered, but sort of like church activities or like our apostolic activity and doing things like that. But especially in my work, now I'm new assignment in the work. I work with the students and then also the housing projects, and then also the how to call it the microfinance, the small microfinance to help the people, especially the women in microfinance, started grew and giving loan, but this is an illegal one, a low profile in doing. And then also like the students, even in here in the group already 4 years of the things, there are no good education continuation. Some teachers are CDMs and like that. So we trying our best, giving a kind of community-based educations, especially they give for the like kind of vocational trainings or like that kind of things. And then also we give the housing, especially those who are very poor, the women or the widows, and then those who are the old or sick, and we give the housing shelter, housing, especially the fund came from the MJA. We call it the mission of the Jesuit Australia Jesuit. We call it from the fund, and we work it undergroundly and like that. And that is how we trying to practice this kind of in this kind of political and then the social financial structure that we have, and especially to do the better for the human dignity, like giving the shelters they may have live as a human, as a dignified place to sleep and like that. Also for the education for the students, especially finance, no? Things that they may little run in this. We call it the financial is very salient in country. So this is the things that I share, and then also William also shared about his experience in the Africa and how he was work as a GIS and then printing and sharing good story. And then William, you can continue fill up with what I share now. And then this is what I like to share in the room for that we and William really pass us all about the things and we share very beautiful and the story of each others. Thank you very much from this room for. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Father
sir.
John. Thank you so much for your service. Can I just ask you before you have to leave us, in the context of the Jubilee of Hope, in the context of TT and everything that we've been reading, what is one piece of your ministry that you would leave as an everyday practice that puts into work what we learned during TT?
Especially from the personal point of view, even fun, even it's a struggle time, even the political state, even the financial structure is very unjust, we can still fighting for the human dignity. And then even we work, just also I share also what I work, it's not all the religions are there, Islam, Buddhist, and Christian also. We can create it, the common good in our humble art and space, a little space that we can put it there, based on our Catholic values, especially to look for the human dignity as we find God in them. That is what I this personally, and also I will try to fight for this value in my mission. My it's not my mission, it's a God mission that I have interested. So I will work on that, and then to promote more of this human dignity and common good, even though in the political situation conflict and the financial structure is not unjust. Like microfinance, what I did is that really some kind of will not be become justified, but at least release of the justice, economic justice to the people, poor people. William, you can add also from yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yes, Father Bill, please go ahead if you have anything to add to that.
Okay, just I was so grateful to hear from Myanmar because the political situations we know is so complex and in many ways repressive. Also, something John had mentioned is the interfaith dimension in a country so divided by, uh, at least ostensibly, religion, to be able to work with Buddhists, Muslims. He works with Rohingya, and then a small number of Catholics. Just for myself, I mentioned recounting that with these massive cutbacks, the refugee camp where I lived for 3 years has now been reduced to 30% of the nutritional diet by the World Food Program. And their representatives say people are slowly starving there. And so the financial system has really betrayed us, I think. And it's been in the US, the globalization of indifference that Francis speaks of. These are funds that had been allocated and now they're refusing to release. But the one good is that at least in one case, we had appealed to a philanthropic organization. We were asking just for $5,000 for wheelchairs for our children. But they were so moved by the stories we were telling in South Sudan that they gave us $200,000, completely unexpected. But that money now is sustaining our work with the children in our education in South Sudan. So just a blessing. And it's testimony to the staff that is working on the ground, especially with the mothers and children with disability. So you've heard enough from me. So thank you.
Well, I think we can all take this as a two more beautiful answers to that question that we posed of really what does a successful progress towards that solidarity that is based in three key themes of Catholic social teaching can we see in our context? And so I want to invite anyone else who was sharing in your groups, please, to open up the floor to hear from you as well.
Yeah, I'll join in. I think I was in group 1. We had a very candid and good discussions to know our countries, our regions, and we talked about Vietnam, Macau, the Philippines, and also East Timor, Kenya. Because I am Francis Adika, I come from Kenya. I'm now in Kisumu, Kenya. I'm an ex-Jesuit. I was a Jesuit for over 7 years. So, yeah. And what we can say is that we saw that there's so much corruption in most of our countries. Corruption is so rife amongst politicians. And with the exception maybe of Vietnam, we had that at least for the last 20 years they have had democracy, and thanks to the internet things are shaping up, and the church is doing quite a lot in trying to redress this aspect of the common good and the economy. And also the Holy See helps them, tries to negotiate and do much. And in East Timor also there was a sense of a new country trying to century, and there's freedoms. It's predominantly Catholic. 97% of our population, of a total population of 1 million people. And also we talked about Macau, where one of our group members is based, and they are doing quite a lot, food assistance programs in Macau, in collaboration with the government, Caritas, and other institutions. And in the China, its future is in debate. So after 25 years, they'll decide maybe if they'll go back to China. And also, there's a lot of casinos. So there's a lot of gambling. And they have migrant workers, Philippines, China, Indonesia, and other countries. A kleptocratic democracy. You call us a democracy, but we're not very democratic. There's a lot of human rights abuses that are happening, and we are very capitalistic. There's a lot of inequality, and that also has given rise to a lot of corruption, which we saw that most of our countries, the Philippines, Vietnam, there's a lot of corruption, and there's a lot of also with that there's a lot of inequality and suppression of, let's say, the voices that can speak much. And I can say, without any fear or contradiction, that I have seen also, especially with Kenya, that the church, the Catholic Church, was a voice like 30 years ago during the democracy advocate. We were strong, but now we have gone. We are like more in bed with the government. The bishops are not that strong. They speak, but I think also because they have embraced that lifestyle of given big cars, SUVs, those fuel guzzlers. And you see, with the example of Pope Francis showed the way. I remember during the memorial mass for Pope Francis, our Archbishop said that the Pope told them that they should not just be bishops that are of airports, always traveling, and they are not on the ground with their people. And that I can remember that is what Bishop shared with us during that mass. And I think that is what is lacking, because when also the church is not very quality in the model of Jesus Christ, we fail. The governments and the others institutions will not really do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Frank. I think you give us so much to think about the interconnectedness of a ever more hyper capitalistic world, hyper productive driven world. And so I think that across different continents, across the global majority, and even the global north with so much forced displacement, we see these interconnectedness of struggles, especially within the intersections of these three themes. So I invite the next participant to come on. We would love to hear from as many of you as possible and make this a lively conversation. So please.
Group 3, charity. Okay, so in our group, there were 3 of us. And looking at the question that we had to discuss, we found that we could not really point at good and strong examples of progress. We could find so many examples in the opposite direction in our current environments, in our current political systems and economic situations. However, we could find some kind of examples at much lower levels where we are operating from ourselves. Like one of our members gave an example of 10 singing groups in her parish, say 10 choirs. And she said that these choirs take part to sing in the liturgies and to perform duties in the parish and so on and so forth, but that each choir looks out for itself and pays what's due to the parish and does their duties without looking out for any other parish. If another singing choir was struggling, the other choir wouldn't really pay attention to them. And she says once one choir didn't have a leader for I don't know what reason, and they asked her choir to offer them a leader, and they asked our member to lead a different choir for a particular event. And she said that the members of her choir pulled her aside and told her, no, you can't do this. You can't go and be leader for the other choir, and so on and so forth. And she had to think about it and sit down with her choir and tell them, but this is charity. And we are doing this for the good of the parish and for the good of everybody. We are doing the same thing. Let's assist them with a leader for this time. And when they are up on their feet, they'll pick it up themselves. So this is one example we had of progress for the common good. We had a second example. This is happening here in Zambia. There is a local TV that has set up and they're operating on social media. And what they do is go out in the communities around Lusaka and find children and families, old people in need. Find anybody that is in extreme need, put them on social media, air their story, and help is coming to these individuals. Children who need operations that their families cannot pay for, grandmothers that don't have a house and somebody is coming in and building them a house, children that can't go to school, and somebody comes in and pays for their education, therefore provide for the poor, meet their economic needs, and help them to get on with life in a better way. Otherwise, we found more examples of the opposite of our question, like many NGOs and much external funding to our countries. There were two. We were three in this group, 3 people, and 2 from the Southern African region. We just happened to be 2 there. And we see that external aid that came and gave our people employment has been withdrawn at large scale, and many people find themselves out of employment. So that's a very, very negative impact on our economy right now. But we also say that on the local scale, we have hope. We see so many people that come up and help another person. And much as this is not charity on a large scale that we would want to see, we are saying that we should not give up. We should do what we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charity. I think I love that you gave us examples of positive, but also a lot of reality, which I think is very relevant, that we all live many truths at the same time. Nothing is ever black and white. There are many shades in between, and there are many realities in between, and many times they are heavily intertwined. I know we weren't a lot of groups, so I'm excited to hear from some of the other groups that were also there. Please feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah, Audrey, we were 4 of us. So we had someone from Cambodia, we had me from Malaysia, and we had Bonnie and Paul from the US, different parts of the US. We talked about a situation that came up in Malaysia. On the occasion of our 68th independence, every Malaysian at 18 and above received a one-off payment of 100 ringgit. It's not very much. If you think about it in terms of US dollars, it's probably about $25. The money was supposed to be, or is supposed to be used for essential goods, rice, sugar, milk, even vegetables, biscuits, some kind of biscuits, and cooking oil, a few things like that. And as usual, Malaysians tend to think very negatively about the motives of such a contribution made by the government. So when I related this story, I didn't think of it as a success, but then the conversation looked at, well, maybe it could be positive in the sense that it is for the common good. Financially, it was good for people who were in need. And it was also very good for the small and medium businesses and it was good stimulation for the economy. But I was thinking, should I make use of this money for myself, or should this money be used for the good of another who might be more needy? And so the discussion was, well, it could be looked at from the point of view of the common good, that if not everyone in the country, at least most people in the country did get some kind of financial assistance, and that we could use that money to support someone else who was more needy than ourselves, than myself, for example. And so it was not for us to question the motives of the government for doing that. As I keep thinking, who am I to judge them, So I don't know if that was a success story or not, but it was it was a good discussion on, well, how can we turn the tables on a negative point of view to a positive point of view? Because when someone here who is I live in an apartment, and so we have people who do the cleaning of the common areas. And so personally, I got some provisions for one of the cleaners and for two of the cleaners, and they were very, very happy with, to get that assistance. So was that, the use of tainted money? I don't know. A similar situation had arisen in the States, according to uh, to Bonnie. At either it was during COVID or before it started before COVID, where institutions were given assistance, and she said that her congregation then thought about, well, if the money does not belong to us, it belongs to others who are in more need. And therefore, they sent out information to wherever they were to get examples of, or to get instances of people who needed money for projects and so on. And so they used that money in that way. So that is for the common good. And it was money used for something that was not selfish, I guess. And one major thing that came up was the fear of speaking up. If something was not going right, our participant from Cambodia said that people are afraid of speaking up because of the consequences. It's similar also in Malaysia. We dare not speak out too boldly in case we get hauled up, and so I'm not sure if that is from what I read in the news, it would seem that people in the US are also very afraid to speak up, or to, walk around, or to be free, to do what they need to do, even to go to work. So fear is a big thing that we need to be aware of, and maybe we have to do something positive about it. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Audrey. I think you bring up a very good point that we also need to think about positionality in many contexts, because as you mentioned in the US, this is a reality. But if we want to be very frank and honest with ourselves, it's not the reality for everyone. It is the reality for the displaced, the poor, the homeless, the migrant, the refugee, whatever box you would like to put us on, even indigenous peoples whose land the US is sitting on currently and built upon, do not have those freedoms and are taken by ICE consistently. And we've seen this very much in the news, but we also have to look at the narrative, and we also have to take pieces of the Catholic social teaching we've seen before in the social analysis as well, for the narratives that are often used as fear-mongering tactics that then just inject further division and hatred in so many different places. So really bridging together the human dignity, the financial systems, but then also the political aspect, knowing the political communications that surround so much of what you gave us as examples. So thank you so much. I believe we have one last group that hasn't shared yet. If not, I want to open it up to the floor for anyone else who wants to share any other examples or answers to the question that we prompted you with, or before turning it over to Father Kammer. It's okay, not everyone at once, please. I know you all want to. If not, I think I'm sure, I don't know, Father Fred, if you're ready to go ahead and jump in. I know we are all anxious to hear from you.
Thank you, Daniela. One of the things that occurred to me as in listening to these last examples, by the way, I was cut off for a couple of minutes technologically here, so it took me a while to connect back in, so I missed a few things. But I'm reminded, especially with the last couple of remarks, of when John Paul II talked about solidarity, He talked about it, not just a feeling, he said, of distress at the problems of people around the world, but a firm determination to commit ourselves to the common good. But he also talked about how solidarity needs to show itself in the decisions of nations, decisions of governments, and the decisions of individuals, and even decisions we make about our own lifestyle. And so when we pose the question, where have you seen solidarity in local, regional, national, or international context, it was because solidarity can show up in the good examples like that television program that in Zambia that went around and focused on people in need, and that prompted other people to respond, or even the sharing of money in Malaysia, the $25 being able to be shared with others. All of those are good examples of solidarity, and I think it's important for us to focus on those at times especially when there are serious problems at the larger international and national levels. I thought when Father O'Neill was on that wonderful quote he had from a friend of Dorothy Day about we can never afford the luxury of despair. And I just thought that was a great thing for us in terms of our response to people in need, to remember that we are meant to be people of hope. I often use, and I have it in my wallet, let me just pull this out for a minute, a quote from Václav Havel, who was in Czechoslovakia, a poet, but who later became the president, actually, after the fall of communism. Take a minute, just 3 little short paragraphs, but I found it actually, in addition to examples that Jesus gives and parables of seeds becoming forests, etc., is this little quote from Václav Havel, which he gave actually in the United States at Liberty Hall in Philadelphia. He says, either we have hope within us or we don't. It is a dimension of the soul, and it's not essentially dependent on some particular observation of the world or estimate of the situation. Hope is not prognostication. It is an orientation of the spirit, an orientation of the heart. Hope in this deep and powerful sense is not the same as joy that things are going well, or willingness to invest in enterprises that are obviously headed for early success, but rather an ability to work for something because it is good, not just because it stands a chance to succeed. And finally, hope is definitely not the same thing as optimism. It's not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense, regardless of how it turns out. It is this hope, above all, which gives us the strength to live and continually try new things, even in conditions that seem as hopeless as ours do here and now. I love that last sentence. Even in conditions that seem as hopeless as ours do here and now. This was in 1986, and his country was living under communism, and he was an outspoken opponent, etc. And 3 years later, communism collapsed in his own country, and he went on to be the president. And so it's a wonderful example, and I love the example that Daniela, that you gave in the last one of these videos from your grandmother, about 80 years to see the seed grow when freedom came. And so it's important for us to be carriers of hope. I think hope is, when we talk about faith, hope, and charity, I think hope is the most underappreciated virtue in those 3. A couple of other things that I heard in examples when Frank was talking, he was talking about some elements of collaboration. You talked about intersection of various groups, etc. I think that the point about collaboration is very, very important, and I think we need to reach out in the ways we can to collaborate with people who share our values, who are part of our church, but also people who are other Christians and people who are other religions, and then people of goodwill, of no religion, whatever it may be. And then all of those are important in terms of collaboration. Of some discussion about this in your last webinar. And how do you collaborate? I found when we were testifying in Congress about issues affecting the poor in the United States, that you can use scripture with people who share respect for the scriptures, that you can use reason, etc. And then I think, as Bill O'Neill so emphasized, with other people you can use the Universal Declaration of Human Rights from the United Nations, that these are agreed upon rights that hold for all people everywhere, of every nationality, tribe, race, gender, whatever it may be. These are values we share with all people. And so I think you have to customize your appeal to the audience you're dealing with. We have to do that, etc. But we have much in common with other human beings in terms of our own human dignity, and also in terms of promoting both human dignity and the common good. Let me talk about fear for a minute. I mean, I think Václav Havel's counters that with the point about hope, that obviously there's fear for some people, and obviously the more vulnerable people are, they may have greater fear and greater reason to be fearful. And so one of the things we have to do is to try to make their voices heard in other ways. I mean, sometimes you have to quote people anonymously who don't want their name to be used in connection with their situation, but to be able to use their story, because again, we're talking here now about the power of story. That's what Jesus is, just this great storyteller, and we have to be able to tell people's stories when they can't, or to make it possible for them to tell their own stories on platforms that we might have of one kind or another, social media, whatever it may be. And so I think that's an important point for us to remember. Ultimately, and Father O'Neill was very emphatic about the human dignity is everybody's. And it's not taken away from anybody, even by crime, but the crimes that they might commit. So even prisoners have their human dignity and are to be treated with human dignity. I love the phrase from the church in Latin America about helping people become artisans of their own destiny. And when I talk to people about it, I say, that's what you want for your children, and for yourself. You want to be able to shape your own future and your own destiny. And that's what every human being on the earth has a right to shape their own dignity and to have the freedom, but also the resources to do that, and to be free of oppression and exploitation in all their forms, in order to become artisans of their own destiny, which is just a wonderful, wonderful phrase. I missed a couple of sessions when we got disconnected here. Daniela, maybe you can raise a couple of points for me.
Yes, so actually, I don't want to take the word away from anyone who spoke, but I want to welcome back Frank, who shared with us earlier. Unfortunately, we had some early departures as well, but I really want to hear people's reaction also to what you just shared, because I think it's a lot of food for thought. So if anyone can really jump in and emphasize on anything that was mentioned before that you want to raise also to Father Fred, please go ahead. This is a tough crowd, let me tell you. The silence. I'm just kidding.
Daniel, maybe just to, again, thank you so much for you and Fred and all who've made this possible. One of the things, and I think Fred was suggesting this, is what gives us hope. We who are working in various forms of ministry. And I think it's often the lives of those whom we serve. I think had I suffered the degree that the refugees I know had, I don't know if my faith would be nearly as strong as theirs, but it's their faith, their hope, living day to day that is such a source of strength for me. These are the hidden saints, and I just think, I think Fred was intimating that their stories, and perhaps we are the ones who are telling them, but to some extent, their stories can strengthen our own. And I'm just so grateful for that. When I hear sometimes people will ask for so little. And I think in the refugee camps, just the care, say, of mothers for their children, the hope, as you said, Fred, that these can be artisans of their own destiny is what sustains them day to day. And I think when the world can seem so overwhelming, that's a grace for us, certainly for me as well. So just to thank you for that.
If I can add, Bill, the other thing is that the very fact that people have become refugees is a sign that they had hope, that they could find something better somewhere else. I mean, obviously, the first principle, and I think you mentioned it in the last webinar, but the first principle in terms of migration is that people have a right to stay where they were born and where they lived, if they can develop the means they have for themselves and their families.
Right.
But then they have a right to move on if that's not possible where they are. And in that sense, every refugee represents a hope-filled person in terms of what they're looking for. And we need to just recognize that about them, that even in the situation in the camps, et cetera, that you've been familiar with, et cetera, that they still have that hope and that inherent dignity.
Right. And if I could just say, Fred, what a gift they are to us. So what Danielle was mentioning, the fear of deportation, is we are deporting blessings, the people that can strengthen our own hope and faith.
Well, thank you both. I think it's also important to mention, I mean, to not go without mentioning that I think around the world, there are so many stories that are never heard and that are never told because unfortunately, the conqueror is always the one telling the story. And that is also the fear of changing certain narratives. And there can be other parts of that truth in the testimonies and the lived memory that many generations carry with them. So what I can share with you is, as I reflect on everything that's being talked about are friends of mine who currently are now internally displaced to Han Yunis. They are from the north of Gaza. And I speak to them every single day. And as you know, the situation is daunting, to say the least. It is one of the worst things that we're witnessing right now, live streamed before us, if you will. And every single day, I jump on the phone with them. And they're a family of 8 children with their parents. Thank God they're all still alive and they're all still intact for the most part, physically at least. And every day when I see them, the first thing they ask me is, how are you? How is everything? I want to know how your day was, because clearly they want to be distracted and they want to connect with something else that is outside of the sheer monstrosity that they're living. And I always give the same answer. I cannot complain. I'm grateful. I'm grateful to see you alive. I'm grateful to see you well. And their response is always, those of you who speak Arabic or know any Arabic, they always say, Alhamdulillah, which means thanks be to God, which means like basically same. And they tell me, if you are okay, then we are also okay. And for me, that is one of the deepest forms of solidarity, human dignity, and love that I can give witness to in this moment, is that children, they are children. They are not of legal age, let me say that. And they wake up every single morning, and before anything can happen, they want to know how everyone else is doing. And if they are doing well, they take hope in that and they carry that forward. We've had so many testimonies. I know Father Bill has spoken about this, of working at JRS and across the field, seeing stories from everywhere, from Myanmar, from Thailand, from various parts of India, Bangladesh, Sudan, DRC, where youth carry the story forward of hope, of building that new future. And it really calls to mind what I think is one of the most beautiful endings to an encyclical, hot take, that I've ever seen, is the ending of Fratelli Tutti, in the prayer of the ending of Fratelli Tutti, which says that we are all the same face of one God, of one creation, of one humanity. And I really hope that maybe in transforming that thought and putting it into practice, we can practice that even with people we don't agree with, even with people who unfortunately are wrapped by fear, and in defending whatever they think they're going to lose, spill that fear with violence, with anger, with judgment, with indifference, whatever it may be, because this is also a testament of what we can achieve when we see the same face of that creation and of that same God reflected in one another and even in nature as well, which is also one of the greatest gifts and the reason why we are all still living and breathing. So I want to open up the floor once again to any more reflections that anyone else has been doing during this time of conversation.
Danielle, let me just add another example. 2 Sundays a month, I go up to the state prison at Angola, which is an infamous prison in the United States. And I'm amazed at how many prisoners, when I ask them how they're doing, they say, "I'm blessed." It's like your friends. They will say, "I'm blessed." And I think, how can you be blessed, have a feeling of being blessed in the midst of all this razor wire? But they are. And there's a profound exchange of faith among prisoners in one of the worst prisons in the country. So it's amazing, and it's what you're citing for us as well among refugees.
I don't know if anyone else had other examples to share, any other thoughts about the articles, the think and links that you receive with each one. We'd also love to hear back feedback on any of that as well.
Uh, I I just thought of sharing, like the young people, the Gen Zs, are very restless, and a group striving for change all over the world. And I remember when they were protesting peacefully last year and even this year. In some instances, they are saying we are peaceful and we are tribeless, and we are partyless, we are leaderless. In that that what Father Fred was saying, the sense of solidarity, that, and how can we achieve it together and fight for a better and just world that is more equitable and uh, uh, puts into practice the common good. So Fred was sharing, I had to think back of that a lot.
Thank you so much, Frank. Also, there was Charity earlier who gave a great example about singing in her church and choirs.
Yes.
And before that, yes, and I thought that was actually really interesting because we don't really speak about the intersection of arts, drawing, singing, dancing with all of these themes. I don't know what anyone thinks about that, please.
Well, I think Pope Benedict was strong on that in terms of his own writing about integral human development. That part of that human development is the autistic side. It's our spirits and souls, etc., and it's manifested in painting and sculpture and music, especially music, I think, in many ways. And that's part of integral human development. I mean, that what happened in terms of Catholic social teaching is a movement from development being just economic to development being economic, social, cultural, religious. It's all of those factors are part of what it means to go back to that phrase, artisans of our own destiny. Um, and so that example about the choirs was wonderful.
I don't know if anyone else has any other additions to the conversation. I think there's so much to be said. I think any part of the world right now, we can all relate to something that's going on. I can definitely say that here in Rome, the mood is very Jubilee oriented. So, that is the main focus. We have the Vatican right here. So, I mean, seeing the pilgrims that come is actually very moving. You see people from all over the world making the pilgrimage from one part of the Via della Conciliazione all the way to the Basilica and going through the Holy Door, and it's crowds and crowds of people of all ages reciting prayers in all languages. And actually, I think that is also a very beautiful and bright form of solidarity that is being displayed. They come from all parts of the world. They are praying together, religious, lay alike, and it's a bit chaotic. So the Rome is not known for its public transportation, so it's very chaotic. And there's a lot of confusion going on, but also it's a beautiful moment to kind of interact with people from all walks of life, all united for that common good and in that hope.
It's important too, Daniela, that people not just celebrate jubilees on 25th and 50th years, which is where we associate it with in religious and priests, etc., or marriages. But the fact is, the jubilee that Jesus announces in Luke 4 is really about, as the last two Jesuit General Congregations talked about it, it's about reconciliation with one another, reconciliation with God, and reconciliation with creation. That threefold reconciliation, all of that is part of the concept of Jubilee. And we hope that maybe on this occasion people would read a little bit more about that and think about it and act upon it in their own lives.
I guess I'll take this opportunity then to ask those of you in the room who are familiar, for example, with the universal apostolic preferences, do you have any examples from all four of those apostolic preferences in your daily life, in your regional, in your local, in your missions even? Because we have this campaign going on right now, the Jesuits for Climate Justice, Faith in Action at COP30. And one of the most interesting responses I've ever gotten is, yes, I understand COP30 is, about climate change and this is very important, but that really doesn't have to do anything with me. And I don't really see why I should know about it or why I should inform myself. And I think it's very interesting because the way that the Secretariat has thought of it is actually at the intersection of the UAPs, but also the call to care for our common home and the 10th anniversary of the Laudato Si encyclical. So I don't know if anyone here also has those key moments of solidarity and examples.
Daniela just mentioned not of my own, but one of the doctoral students I was working with at Georgetown, Farwende Sani from Burkina Faso, is finishing a 2-year postdoctoral program. And he's been in Kenya working with, I think, 5 different religious congregations of women and looking at their environmental advocacy, especially the way they've drawn on traditional non-Western epistemologies, they would say, but sources of wisdom. And they would probably more than many Jesuits exemplify the integrating the apostolic priorities. But I've just been very impressed with his work at Georgetown. He'll be going back to leave Burkina Faso to start up a research center on environmental justice.
There's on matters environment, I think it's taking quite a while, and I've not had so much in parishes that sense of really the focus being more than spiritual sometimes or religious. So that is also a bit of a challenge. And coming up with very programs aimed at addressing some of these things, but since I worked for Regency, I worked in the Jesuit high school. I know that the Jesuits are stolets in where they are doing their stuff, and also they are trying also to inform others of Laudato Si, and so I hope that will still focus and key aspect of environment, especially the world being our common home. The world being our common home. Leo, there's that aspect of also really continuing with some of the ways of Pope Francis. So yeah.
The floor is open, please. Anyone else? I guess one of my biggest questions as a young person, to be completely transparent, is that thinking of how to preserve human dignity in a world that is consistently more dependent on technology, especially artificial intelligence, is one of my biggest fears for the future. Not only for the planet and the nature, just because of the amount of water and resources that it takes to even keep something like that going, and the ethical problems that that also cites, amongst also human dignity issues, human rights violations, and the latter. But also, how do we find a balance between you can't separate yourself at this point. Everything that we do, so right now working, I need the laptop. I need a phone in order to communicate with people from across the world. It's a beautiful tool, but it's also used to desensitize in so many ways and to normalize and to consistently bombard with so many images and so many things. What does that look like in terms of finding just that medium and solidarity with others in my own generation who are hooked? We are hooked. I really believe this is like a drug. And it's horrible.
Well, I know, Daniela, that there are some schools in the United States now that are now banning the cell phones in the schools, and people are discovering other ways of. Well, now some people are discovering they're going back to old technology, so they're still hooked on. There was a story about it just recently. They're hooked on other things. They're getting iPads or iPods or whatever, etc. But it is a question about can we fast, and maybe the old Catholic thing about abstention and fasting is can we do that with our technology? Are we able to turn it off? And do we need to practice turning it off? I mean, there are the big questions that you're raising in terms of the amount of energy that's used to actually produce artificial intelligence. But again, going back to Benedict's comments, I mean, to John Paul's comments about solidarity, it's manifested in part by our own lifestyle. And so the question is, what ways can I change my own lifestyle in terms of relating to technology? For example, I don't have an iPhone. I have an old flip phone. But I'm finding now, I swim, and I swim at the YMCA, and I'm finding now that I can't reserve the pool without using their app. And I'm saying to myself, how does that work? So the culture conspires against us, even when we try to change some of those things. But we have to do some of that ourselves.
Yeah.
Good morning. Domingos is speaking.
Hi,
Regarding
Domingos.
the topic that you are talking about, a few months ago we were discussing about. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
A little bit, it's a bit muffled, but we can hear you.
Okay, I will try to speak louder. Last month we were talking about this topic. One of my friends was talking about. Uh, wait a minute, I will check the microphone.
It's okay.
Yeah, last month we were talking about this technology and regarding the technology in young men, how to educate young men in the context in this reality. And one of my friends was raising a question. The problem is we are not going back to the past, and the world will move forward. Will go to the front. But the question is how we educate the humanity in this context, in this reality, which is the technology and the artificial intelligence is like leading us, right? So he was giving an example like this. When I talk to somebody, I don't. When I talk, for example, I talk to one of my friends. I don't say I'm going to talk to my friend through WhatsApp or through other means. I'm treating the person as a person through this media, right? I don't divide the person and the media or the environment. For example, we are in this environment. We don't say, "Oh, I have a meeting." Yeah, of course, we have in our mind that we have a meeting online, but we don't separate the person that we are encountering or we are talking to as a different person through media and different person in the reality. So the question he was asking is how we find the ways to educate the humanity in this complex situation, and we cannot go back to the past, but and the problem is how we go with this. We educate, we humanize the human being in this context. So yeah, somehow like this, I hope you get what I am trying to say.
Sometimes, though, it does involve going back to the past. I'm seeing reports now that professors in universities are talking about going back to what we used to call the Blue Book, which were these little paper books that you wrote your answers to tests and questions and your essays in this book. And they're doing it because it cuts off access to artificial intelligence and the use of programs and things to write for you. So it's an interesting approach to actually use an older technology. Well, I think that's partly there in when people do a return to the land and go back to some form of farming, whether it be gardening or something else. I mean, why Dorothy Day emphasized the farm and the agriculture, that in some ways we need to go back and hold on to the good things from the past, as well as needing to adopt and adapt the technology of the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know if anyone has anything to add to those contributions just before we start wrapping up the session.
No, I also think it's good, but you find that the technology, most of these, the laptops that we are using, some of us, the mobile phones, most of the resources are gotten from the Congo. And where it is gotten from, people are really being butchered and killed. And there's not so much justice about it. It's just the greed. That is what we politics, the economies of the world. Imagine if Congo had peace. How much even we will enjoy using the mobile phones and what have you. And I think also it's a matter of attachment. What sometimes it is said, some of us are too attached to our technology and we think we cannot survive. But I use it mostly. It depends also how you use it. What do you use it for? Like for this kind of communication, it is vital, it is important. But the over attachment to it for the likes and Facebook and everything, it's not necessary. So, yeah, it's just learning how to detach from it, I think. Like I said before, in the I was a Jesuit. So in the novitiate, of course, we didn't have phones. So it didn't kill anyone. And for now, my phone can stay the whole day without ringing. Like today, nobody has called me. So apart from this engagement, I've not had any other engagement the entire day. I'm like a monk. So it's about and necessary.
So I don't know, Father Fred, if you have any final remarks for us on these topics and on this lively discussion we've had today.
I just have one final remark, which is to thank you, Daniela. You really do this well, bringing people in, repeating back what people have said, restating, etc., and framing up the questions. And I think we all owe you a debt of gratitude.
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank all of you. I think, again, we wouldn't have TT without the materials that you so graciously drafted for us. So all those years ago and published and compiled together. There's so many. Sometimes I go through the articles, the originals, and I'm like, wow, okay, this is masterwork. So we owe a debt of gratitude to you so that we can create this platform and that we can continue these conversations within the context of our time as well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I had a 10-year period to do it and just do one article every quarter. So there are 40 of them now, but you just need the time to do this thing. It's like any other writing. But thank you.
Well, thank you all. I think that we can go ahead and go back to the slides to wrap up the session. I think that at least I walk away from this discussion with so much to think about, especially when it comes to the interconnectedness between human dignity, politics, and financial systems. What does this look like in different contexts, different cultures, across different religions? The intersectionality, the plurality of this, and what examples we can take on and apply within our own context, within our own lives, to learn from one another, while also trying to find the balance of living sometimes paradoxical truths, not only in our surroundings, but within ourselves as well. And so I'd really like to thank Father Kammer for coming on and speaking once again, giving us his time very early in the morning. So I thank you very, very much for this, and also Father Bill as well for joining us. And I want to shamelessly plug what the SJES is doing here in Rome. Unfortunately, with the passing of Father Eric, we've had some minor setbacks, but the Promotio Iustitia, with which he really worked on, it was really a labor of love of his at the Secretariat, is coming on to its 138th issue. So please be on the lookout for that. And if you want to go to echojesuit.com and take a look at the Letters to the Earth Education Initiative, materials, handbooks, and student workbooks that you can use in French, Spanish, English, and soon Portuguese, so that you can educate at different levels children about the climate crisis and what they can do for the future. And then we've just launched the Faith and Ecology podcast, a 9-episode series about topics preparing us for the COP30, but also at the intersection of faith and ecology. So exactly what we were talking about just now. We actually finished filming the 7th episode yesterday, which won't be released until much later, about critical raw materials and minerals. And we had someone from the Congo, the DRC, coming to speak just about that. So I really invite all of you to connect, to, if you can go and look at the materials, if you are in a school, in your ministry, in your mission, and you want to share those materials, the invitation to participate is wide open. And also, of course, to keep on with the TT journey. It is not over, thank God. And so with that, I just want to thank each and every one of you, also our collaborators who do the great work of editing and revising everything from the Gregorian University here in Rome, but also the JPIC Commission of the UISG, and of course the Teaching Tuesdays team here at the SJES, Milton Raj and Father Roberto Jaramillo, and also Rosanna, our secretary, who also helps to coordinate all of the translations. So, and of course, last but not least, Fred Kammer. Thank you so much, Father Fred.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Are those links in the chat?